Hi there, welcome to Grey Muzzle Geekery for the week of August 19th, 2019, episode 28. I'm Dusty Red, and with me as always,
I'm Dusty White.
And we'll get into this week's news.
Sony says sayonara to Marvel. Spider-Man will no longer be a joint Marvel and Sony venture. What will become of our snarky teenage crime fighter now?
Final Fantasy VIII Remastered launches on September 3rd for the PlayStation 4.
Along with the revitalizing of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, Keanu is revisiting another one of his famous roles. Along with Carrie-Anne Moss, they both plan on returning in a fourth Matrix movie.
Doom 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 doomy 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 doom doom doom. Ooh, what's this? It's Invader Zim, and in fact, with a new 71-minute movie called Enter the Florpus, released on Netflix on August 16th. Zim is back and up to no good, though Jonan Vasquez was quick to point out that the new movie isn't a nostalgia trip. In an interview, he was asked about his dislike of nostalgia and brought up Star Wars Rogue One. In quote, "I bring up Rogue One, I bring up Star Wars a lot, that sort of thing. I'm not the biggest Star Wars fan, but I am a big fan of movies, and I grew up with Star Wars, and I fucking love Rogue One. I thought Rogue One was one of my favorite Star Wars movies, but the worst shit in the movie was all those little reminders of, hey guys, this is from Star Wars. Remember this? Remember these guys in the alley? They're from the Cantina in A New Hope. Isn't it great? Aren't you entertained?" And I'm just like, no, I'm really distracted. I don't need this. You're telling me an okay story. This is cool. Shut the fuck up with the references. So someone who's going the anti-nostalgia trip. Good job, Vasquez.
And finally, feel free to come see us at Alliance South Michigan, September 14th and 15th. Prime weekend to join us if you're looking into LARPing.
And we'll be sure to have in the show notes a link to pre-register, as this is their Dragonfall key event, where they will also need a head count to make sure everybody is fed. It is a hell of an event, so I suggest that if you are interested in LARPing, this is the time to do it. Again, check our show notes for pre-register information and where they play. And finally, from Navy sites in Japan to U.S. Air Forces across the United States, cooling vests have made their way into the U.S. military, thanks to EasyCool down vests, made popular by one of the furries. Created by the Dutch fur Easy Wolf, military furries have donned the fursuit cooling accessory for their active duties with great success. While no formal or official contract stands with the company, personal orders have come in for these individuals to use their fursuit cooling device for their active duty positions, which is pretty awesome to see that you take something that's going to, I don't know, have you wear a giant people carpet to stay cool in that and use it for other things. And now that the site EasyCool actually uses a lot of pictures of people in construction vests with that cooling vest underneath it, cosplayers in full cosplay gear, which is a fursuiter, is more or less a cosplayer as well, that has these vests on to keep them cool. So if you're going into military use and other uses for being outside for any length of time,
right,
or the need to stay cool, awesome. That's good to hear.
I'd actually seen an interesting, a short video of somebody introducing a new product for themselves, or product that they're making, which was like a popsicle, but it secretly had a cooling fan in it. Oh. So it was a prop.
Yeah, one of the props that had a fan into it. Yeah,
I thought that was really interesting and unique.
It's any way to hide and not break that immersion. And I've seen similar with other like cosplayer props where they use a big fan or a big, while you're just watching Soul Eater again,
right,
with a giant scythe that has like a fan hidden in there, stuff like that. You'll see a lot of even suitors or Samus cosplayers or Master Chief and stuff like that will have fans built into the helmets as well,
which totally makes sense
to keep cool, because obviously, yay, all your heat. But it does go into an interesting conversation, because we did just finish watching Colin Quinn, Red State, Blue State, and it had a very interesting viewpoint that is reminiscent to another one of our favorite comedians, Christopher Titus,
right?
That danced on how political matters are gone askew, so to speak. Now, obviously, we try to stray away from political matters here, but sometimes we have to dip more than our toes, but our ankles into the situation. Because coming up this weekend in Indianapolis, Indiana, is the Indianapolis Fur Con, or IFC. However, there's been a little bit of backlash that has been going on with this particular convention due to, well, an open invite to some people who aren't quite seen in the community as they used to be. Now, it dances on a very interesting line that we're talking about comedy and how it needs to adapt or does it need to adapt? Does it need to change? Does it need to stay in its lane, so to speak? Does it need to be crass and remind people that this is humor? Or it is made to be poked at a topic? Or do we also get to a point where we're so woke that we have to look at topics and go, this is, you are clearly punching down, therefore this is not funny.
Right.
So what are some of your takes out the gate? And we'll toss back and forth.
Well, we watch a lot of comedy between Dusty, Red, and myself, and most comics nowadays are quick on within the first 5 to 10 minutes of their comedy set to mention how political comedy is almost not harder to write, but it gets to that point of it's writing itself, and there comes a point where comedy has to evolve, and I personally think that comedy has to evolve to fit the time period in which it is in. We just recently were talking to somebody, I think at Midwest Furball, and talking about how some comedy just does not age well. You've got Bill Cosby talking about Spanish Fly, and
a little relevant. And even one of the Bill Cosby things where he's talking about, what is on a episode of Fat Albert, where he's talking about people go to jail and they do bad things and stuff. It's like, whoa, foreshadowing.
Right. So you get one of these that if you become a fan of comedy, like imagine if we are brand new, coming 13, 15-year-olds are like, oh, I really like comedy. And you've got a parent that's like, oh, here, let me show you the forefathers of comedy. Some of these other comedians, even greats like George Carlin and Robin Williams, some of their acts are going to feel cringy because the time in which they did them, they weren't as aware and social. There was a social commentary that wasn't as you said, awoke as it is now.
I hate that term, by the way. I hate the whole woke thing. I will go on record and say it. I understand the need to be conscious, and I understand the need to be aware of the situation, but the overall wokeness does drive me up a wall. It is a point of that so-called wokeness does interfere with comedy in a sense of still being able to punch at a topic. It is a case of when are you punching down and when are you making fun versus when are you giving something the proper check it needs. When are you giving something the proper poke of, hey, this is a little absurd. We do need to look at this.
Do you feel like there's a difference when a comedian such as Colin Quinn, the Red State, Blue State, is that he was poking fun at both sides? So his ability to be a little bit more crash or be a little bit more, I want to say, grading on picking on a side, left side, right side, red side, blue side. Do you feel like because he's doing it as a balanced comedy show, he gets away with a little bit more?
I mean, when you balance it out, it makes both sides easy. Again, we could go back to Titus as well, and we've seen Titus live, and he was doing very similar of picking on both sides, making fun of the absurd, which in of itself is part of the act. That is I guess you could say, the genius in the writing. Because it's not just, I'm making fun of this or I'm making fun of this, but they're taking extreme cases from both sides and saying, this guy in camouflage Crocs and a rifle, 3 rifles strapped to his back, and screaming this and this with 6 different tattoos of the American flag on it. And what's the thing of, like, if you don't stand for the singy song, the magic skycloth won't freedom. Like, take someone like that and then put him in stark contrast with the, free trade coffee, Birkenstock, haven't showered, and these are all tropes and
I mean, comedy is a medley of tropes. It always has been.
You're taking the tropes, but you're also pointing out the absurdities within them. Even though they are absurd, they are ridiculous. I don't know many people who have 12 different tattoos of the U.S. flag and this, but you could see some of those personality traits in people that and could kind of start putting them almost in categories of go, this reminds me of a family member or of a friend I know or of somebody I saw down the street. So you can start looking at that and going, what exactly are we making fun of? In a way, all of it you could be making, like anytime you make fun of somebody that's their air quote stupid, you're still making fun of just raw ignorance, which again, you could look and go, well, that's not nice to do, because somebody is allowed to be ignorant, not know, and learn. So are you making fun of the willful ignorant?
Right.
But you're still punching down at that point, because that may be just what they're taught. So, I mean, even with this thing we just talked, when we was talking about sex, and being like, oh, old-fashioned, I like it this way and this way, like, I consider myself a very sex-positive type person. So it's a case of, no, I think that thought style is antiquated, and it's outdated, and he's allowed to have that opinion, and I'm allowed to disagree with it.
I feel like a lot of his special is going off of, and he even says it, he says, all ideas are great as concepts and ideas. It's when you take those concepts and ideas to an extreme that it becomes different, or it becomes
like our show,
difficult, or it becomes a problem.
Sure.
It's essentially, the movie Dogma.
Accurate.
So I mean, it's like not a throwback for last episode, but religion is a great concept, bad practice.
Well, I want to kind of reel us back to the premise of IFC or Indy Fur Con, because I'm not going to pull any punches, so let's go for it. So there was a issue with the comedian, and I'm putting air quotes on the term comedian, that goes by the
somebody
name
that
of,
stands up and says a bunch of stuff hoping people will laugh. Sure, we'll go with that thought.
You've done that.
Shush.
A little Miss Open Micer.
I had a lot to drink.
And it was a good one. So the thing is once upon a time, this comedian, to the Ranting Griffin, would go and say so-called funny things. The problem with these funny things is that he was in a sort of an echo chamber in terms of was a comedian in a community that was smaller and was a little bit younger and gravitated and grabbed onto, hey, here's a guy that's saying some funny stuff. And I would be remiss in saying that I was younger and I was a bit of a fan, and some of the stuff he said was funny. The problem is, though, is that you then, again, like some of our heroes, like Carlin and stuff, you look and go, okay, some of that stuff hasn't dated well, or some of that stuff is just flat out mean or wrong to say.
Right.
For whatever reason, whatever your viewpoint of wrong to say is. Again, freedom of speech, and I'm waving my hands
again,
here. Again,
great idea. Maybe sometimes bad practice.
So you have this guy that's going around and saying this stuff and being a comedian and doing his job, but rather than acknowledging that, the 20 years of stuff that he's been saying does not really work in today's crowd.
He almost doubled down.
Oh, he hardcore doubled down. Oh, 100% he doubled down and went, no, I believe this. This is what I'm going to say. This is how I do.
Even if he didn't believe it, it almost seems like, at least from the outsider or the adjacent person that I am, it seems like he may have only said certain things to get a rise and maybe not even believe what he was saying. And then when it stops...
But that's where the double down comes from.
But what point does it change from comedy, or you're getting a positive reaction, in theory, to, oh, this is no longer getting a positive reaction, but it's just getting a reaction, so I'm going to double down.
It's always going to get a positive reaction. Always. Because there's always going to be one asshole in the crowd that believes it.
Right.
And that's
fair.
And that's where it gets dangerous, because it starts with the one asshole that believes it or doubles down on that notion. And it's with almost any bad idea. This goes political, this goes religious, this goes across the spectrum. This could be just someone cheating on a math test. You have the bad idea, and if that bad idea is convincing enough, or if that bad idea could get enough people to follow or spread that bad idea, then that bad idea grows into a fully fledged fucking concept.
Right.
Which becomes infectious. People like groups. Again, we said this before. People like being social. They like being within social constraints in terms of, hey, we believe this thing, let's all believe it together. Or, hey, we like this thing, let's all like it together. So there's many cases where people could even know that it's wrong. Or know that, like, there's a good number of how many people do you genuinely think that believe the earth is flat compared to the people who cling on to that concept because it's funny, or they're trolling, or they're being clever, or birds aren't real, they're just surveillance devices. But you have people like this that it becomes difficult to look at the swath of people and go, do you genuinely believe that birds aren't real? Or are you just that good at fucking with me because it's starting to scare me? And there are people that are like that. There are some people that can convince you that, yeah, but that scary part is at what point do they start to convince themselves?
Right.
At what point do you start going, hey, I'm funny because I made a joke and made these couple people laugh and they reinforced me. And then all of a sudden, the next show I did, because those 3 people are advocates, they end up bringing 10 of their friends.
Other advocates.
So now all of a sudden, I'm building my own echo chamber with my audience, who now I go up there, and we see it with popular comedians too. There's some popular comedians out there. I mean, I love Wanda Sykes to death, but how many people have she pissed off with her kind of comedy, with her very clear liberal bias and liberal viewpoints, and being a minority in terms of being African American and being a woman, which is both 2 classes of people that just get shit all over, at least in my experience. I'm sure it's similar to your experience.
Right.
Neither of us are black women, but you're 50% there.
No, and I understand that, and I wonder as us as comedy consumers, how much has our enjoyment of certain comedians changed and evolved as well? Well,
that goes back to the convention that's happening this weekend. Is once because that comedian too performed at
also,
IFC.
Who names their name too? Like, that is the world's worst name.
I mean, how many? And we got 2 Dusty sitting in the room, like,
right? I mean,
no, it's
anyway.
No.
Sorry,
don't. That's personal attack. That's not nice. He's allowed to come up with whatever name he wants. He's allowed to come up with whatever he.
Woo!
That said, he was once a special guest for the convention, and so with their 10th year anniversary, the convention went, hey, we want to invite all these guests back. They sent in an invite, or basically a late night tweet, basically saying, hey, we're having this big party at the convention, we're bringing all of our old guests back, and then brought back, or said that they're going to bring back this particular guest. The problem is that the fandom in of itself is no longer just 400 people at a hotel, isn't the weird awkwardness that it used to be.
Right.
Has grown into a point of just a variety of viewpoints, a variety of it grew its own pair of testicles, really. The fandom now isn't just the, hey, I'm going to hide and kind of, sneak out when I can. There are people.
It grew its own voice. How about we say that?
It grew its own voice.
Okay.
Sure. It fortified.
There you go.
It fortified. It definitely. No, and I agree. I was stammering over it. Okay, you got me. It is fortified. It has grew its own voice and has become a loud voice and has become a very noticeable voice. And in many ways has become a very self-criticizing voice and a very policing voice within its own community, to the chagrin of others who go, well, can't we just enjoy the fandom and not talk politics and not talk this? And it goes back to the conversation we have of, sure, when politics or when these particular topics don't directly affect these people, then sure, we could go back to that. But until then,
this is a lifestyle. This is something that I choose, and your direct opposition is affecting who I identify as myself and how I live my life.
So now a lot of people have pulled away from that convention. A lot of the special guests have said, no, we're not showing up. We don't support this. We don't do that.
We don't support this decision. We don't support. Whereas it was meant to be a grand gesture on the behalf of.
I have my own tinfoil, my
sheet metal sombrero.
My sheet metal sombrero on this. That's racist. I'm just saying. My own sheet metal sombrero on this particular topic of, I don't think it was so.
Oh, I told you. I think we're on the same page there. That I believe it might have been a opportunity to drum up conversation or drum up. I don't want to say business, but drum up hype or drum up some type of excitement, good or bad, and it backfired.
Maybe. I mean, every time any publicity is good publicity.
And I feel like in the grand scheme of world affairs or being a celebrity or anything like that, that's absolutely true. But when it's a small venue, and as much as furry fandom has gotten larger over the years because of the internet and things like that, it's still a very small subsect when you're looking at.
Oh, sure.
You're not pulling Comic-Con numbers something like that.
The largest furry convention currently at Midwest Fur Fest had 11,000 people. The smattering of conventions in the Midwest between Fur Squared in Wisconsin, IFC in Indianapolis, Motor City in Detroit, pool anywhere from 1,000 to 1,300 maybe.
Okay.
1,400. So, yeah.
You're still looking kind of at a drop of the bucket.
Anime Central uses the same venue as Midwest Fur Fest, and they're pulling in 36,000.
Right.
Like, ta-da! So easily
the mindset of any publicity is good publicity may not have been the best choice of ideas behind that thought.
So ultimately, it boils down to that voice stepping up, and again brought up the question of, so comedy evolving, like, and you hit the nail on the head a little prematurely, but I'm down with it. What do you do with the likes of Carlin? What do you do with the likes of, even Pryor to a degree, but Pryor was a little bit more made fun of himself. He definitely targeted himself. Pryor made fun of his upbringing and his lifestyle, which was unique for comedy at the time, but it is a safe bet going forward and has been a safe bet. People picking on themselves, because it's hard to be mad at, like, oh, you shouldn't say that about yourself. It's like, but this is my experience, whatnot. Where early Carlin picked on Catholicism and his Catholic upbringing.
Right.
And then just turns, the further hunched over he got, the more the angrier and more just jaded that he got toward everything else, which is understandable. But it got to the point of preachy. It got to the point of, Jesus, shut the F up. Like, we get it. You don't like people. You think there's too many people. Like,
you don't like stuff.
You don't like stuff. You don't like people. You don't like things. Got it. Next.
So I kind of bring it back to how much as consumers also have to evolve with the people making comedy. I know personally, I am very picky when it comes to female comics. I like strong female comics. However, I am not a fan of strong female comics that do nothing but man bash. I don't like severely overly feministic or feminism comics.
Well, I mean, and I'm sure you could say the same thing. No, you don't like male comics who are just
female bashing,
bashing, everything else.
Yeah,
So,
that's true.
So any kind of extremes you're not a fan of, which isn't a bad thing to acknowledge, though, because there's some people that may enjoy that, and again, could laugh at the humor of it. Like, I'll admit, like, there's some Joe Rogan stuff I enjoy, and yes, I do listen to Joe Rogan's podcast every now and then. Yes, I tend to have Wikipedia and Snopes open just to make sure I can fact check some of the stuff at the same time.
And that says something to you about a consumer of his comedy, that you see what his failings are, and instead of continuing to blindly follow or spout or regurgitate his
stuff, his media, whatever it is.
Yeah, whatever he chooses to talk about, you are smart enough and intelligent enough as a consumer to understand that you don't blindly follow that. Which you can double check that thing.
Which we could be just kind of looking at what point do we look at these kind of media outlets and stuff and go, have they been dumbed down? Like, at an era in time where we could find any bit of information with the click of our finger and find, hey, this is proven, this is disproven, this is true, this is not true. It also seems to be at the biggest point of society where we also just instantly believe.
And social media, to kind of bring it back to what we just watched with Colin Quinn, he talks about just the freedom of speech or the freedom of knowledge being so blown out of proportion with social media and Twitter and Facebook and things like that, that you do find people that are just like, oh, this is something, it's on the internet, it's got to be true, I'm going to add this and spread this lie, essentially, and then you have just false knowledge out there.
Well, and I think it was actually, oddly enough, it was on one of those Rogan episodes I was listening to, where he was talking to, it's either Mike Tyson?
Okay.
I think it was Mike Tyson, where he basically says that attention does not equal recognition. And I think a lot of people have a tendency of forgetting that, where they go, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me, you see me, ta-da, but it doesn't it's not recognition. You didn't do anything. You didn't achieve anything. You just stood on a taller chair and screamed aloud. Like, okay, so you stood on the chair and yelled fire a bunch and everybody responded to it. That's not recognition, though. They just looked at me like, this guy's an asshole or this guy's whatever. And then obviously goes on to say that, like, with the Quinn part too, of like, we are not built for this level of media and this level of consumption of, we're deviating a little bit from the comedy aspect, I realize, but it is kind of a touch of, we've got so much stuff, so much media.
We are bombarded constantly. So
it's interesting when comedians could start poking at that as well and go, it's funny in a sense when you have people who make a living talking to people, ourselves included, that, well, we don't make a living on it, but someday, that make a living for this stuff, and at the same time, we'll have this self-reflection, self-awareness, and say, yeah, it's too much sometimes. Like, we don't want everybody to listen to us all the time. We don't want all this. We don't want all that, because it is an overabundance of consumption. It is an overabundance of knowing everything and all the time. Like, I wanted to get rid of Facebook. I still want to get rid of Facebook, but if it wasn't for Facebook, I wouldn't know who's having a party and when's their birthday. Other than that, I'm down for deleting it.
Where will you get your werewolf if you get rid of Facebook?
You leave my werewolf alone.
But you see that even The Onion, it makes a living off of satire,
which is still comedy, though.
Right, which is a form of comedy, absolutely. And then you even have comics, like I said, Patton Oswald's recent comedy special opens up with, the first thing I do in the morning is open Twitter, and this shit writes itself. Like, it has become such a... But,
in that same stand-up, bit halfway through, he then weighs on very heavy, serious topics. like his wife passing.
Right.
And that you have to look at for the writing that it is. It's basically genius writing because you open up the show at something trivial and something super mundane and something super relatable. And then you start spiraling down into something that many people may not be able to relate to.
Right.
That many people may not be able to feel comfortable with. But he's already suckered you in for the first 20 minutes, so you're in for the ride whether you like it or not.
Fair.
That is absolutely genius writing on his behalf. To not open the show with that. To not open up with, so, did anything interesting happen in your lives? Because, boy howdy, let me tell you about mine. To open up with something that... And again,
everybody personally can relate to right wing, left wing, whatever.
Yeah, you open Twitter
and it's a bombardment of anything, and even to the point of the Twitter algorithm sends you things that are related to you. It becomes Twitter and Facebook both become echo chambers.
That's how I got my dating geek website that opened up on Facebook for me. Hey, you're a nerd. You're single.
Find
other nerds in your area. I don't know if it's going to find me a girl. It's just going to have a dice bag with a hole in it and just be like, go to town. Where else do you put your dice? Jeez. There's a hole on top.
Alexa's already listening to you. NSA's already knows your name. You're on a list somewhere.
You, of all people, know that Alexa does not listen to me at all. Turn on the lights. You need a new bike? You're looking a little shut up. No, turn on the lights.
You've now made some of our listeners Alexa turn on and go. Now their lights are off. Great. Fantastic.
Alexa, lights off. So they're going to work. We'll see what happens. Yeah, she doesn't understand. Yeah, okay. See, there we go.
So it's Alexa, it's not rude to overtalk someone.
I'm going to tell you that.
So I'm interested to see what comedy is in the next 5 to 10 years. Because even now, you look back and you can go, you had the one-man shows. You still have that's basically
John Leguizamo is really good for the one-man shows.
And I was going to say, the Colin Quinn one we just listened to was kind of akin to that because it had more knowledge. It kind of informed the audience as it was going along and being comedic. Well, John Leguizamo's one was very similar.
Well, and we go back to, I think in of itself, comedy's going to stay the same. I mean, obviously comedy's going to do that. I think the expectation is going to be higher in terms of everybody's a little bit more knowledgeable. Even if there's willful ignorance there, everybody has access to information. Everybody has stuff. So it's, because there are some comedians out there that still... Like, Jay Leno is a good example of... You can't find Leno stuff online. You can't find Leno... Because he is very, he has his bit. He has his, hour that he does.
Okay.
And that's it. So
you already know going in to go see Leno that it's basically, okay, I'm going into seeing this hour-long segment, hour and a half
long segment Vegas.
And ending.
It's like doing Vegas. People that do, you saw Penn and Teller live in Vegas, right?
I didn't see it in Vegas, but, it was their Vegas show.
Their Vegas show,
yeah.
But that is the same show that they do 3 nights a week.
Right.
Or 3 nights a night, or 3 times a night, 5 days a week or something like that. That is their show. That is what they do.
Right.
It's the same show. It doesn't change. There might be an act or a bit here and there. They might change, but for the most part,
it's a static show.
You go to see them, and they do that. So if you saw it, hey, did you see Penn and Teller last year or 4 years ago? Yeah, it was the same thing. Yeah, cool. Wasn't it great? Yeah, that's what they did. So you're looking at what is the evolution of the traveling comedian.
Like Titus.
Like Rogan, even Gaffigan kind of, he does the road and he does his thing, but there's still just the key, Gaffigan can't do a bit without somebody screaming, hot pockets to him, so he's almost forced to do that bit.
So I feel like it's kind of similar to a friend of mine and I went to, actually a couple of friends of ours went to Elijah Schresenberger's I always mispronounce her last name. I'm awful, but I'm a huge fan.
Yeah,
I saw all of her Netflix specials, but we went and saw her and basically saw round about her next Netflix special. So when we went and saw her in December, and I think her next Netflix special came out in like April or March, and it was pretty much beat for beat the same thing we saw in December. So it's almost like
minus a couple jokes, because apparently you're saying that there's one joke that targeted me very, very
I
specifically.
remember something very akin to being very reminiscent of maybe a past relationship you had been in at one point or another. However, there tends to be, if you're a fan of that comedy or that the comedian, you might go and see them pretty regularly. I've personally seen Titus 3 times.
Sure.
But I'll still listen to his podcast and his all of his new specials and things like that. So there is a recognition of, even though I've heard it a bunch of times, I still find myself laughing at it. Well, there's a repetitiveness there for his comedy that maybe a Vegas comic doesn't have.
I would argue on that one, because I think a lot of that is still funny flat out. You're still able to do, if he just if he stations himself in Vegas and just did it, I think he would just be all right. I think he has less spectacle though.
Right.
Like Titus in particular, we're going to target our poor Titus here. But I think that he's just got less spectacle to his stuff. He also enjoys, because that's the other thing you have to ask about comedy is, are you doing stadium comedy like
Kevin
Gabriel
Hart
Iglesias or Kevin Hart, or are you doing stuff like, Laugh Factory or, Belly Room and all these other things? Are you
building your show as you're on the road, basically?
Well, no, not even that. There's going to be a different vibe. And I study comedy. I've done some open mics, but I like to study it and look at it and dissect it. You're going to get a different reaction. You're going to get a different feed off of a room when you have a stadium with 8,000 to 10,000 people that somebody laughs. Even that contagious laughter is just going to disappear into the rafters. Where if you're doing some small room, like the Laugh Factory that has, or even where we were at in Schaumburg, where they've only got 200 seats maybe.
Right.
Things are funnier in a smaller group that way. You're
a little bit more contagious.
Laugh. It's more contagious. There's the ceilings are low. Everything bounces. It
feels more intimate.
Well. Feels more intimate. The comedy feeds well. So you also have to look at the style of comedy versus the comedian versus the venue. You could have somebody like Robin Williams who could do a huge stadium and a huge sellout thing, but he's mostly remembered for his smaller sets when he's able to walk the crowd and mess around and be just a complete
more
animal.
Improv.
And more improv and just do him compared to, we've seen the Live on Broadway with Robin, but it's still scripted. It's still there's still, as fluid as Robin Williams is, and that particular stand-up bit, you can still feel him constrained. You can still feel that he's got to fit. He's very fluid, very much like water, but he's very much in this vase where he has to navigate his bit in the way he does things. Whereas, again, you have people like that could get away with, again, Kevin Hart's really good about the big stadium and the big show like that. Gabriel Iglesias also does the same thing. Big venue, big stadium style comedy. Then there's just some comedians that prefer the smaller and on the road. You get to see more when you're out traveling. You have to adjust your jokes. What works in California...
that's very true. Doesn't work in
Alabama.
Right.
That doesn't work in Chicago. That's not going to work in New York. You're not going to So it just really depends on the level of creativity that you're working with. I mean, even when I do, my stand-up stuff isn't going to work at a normal venue. Club, in a normal venue type stuff, at a normal open mic, because I do pick on niche communities. I do pick on LARP. I do pick on fur. I do pick on stuff, and not negative pick on, but those are my your focuses.
Punchlines. They're
those
based
are my punchlines. That's my stuff.
Those things.
So if you don't know what those are, it's just going to go over your head. So obviously I'm always going to be limited to that audience, which, if that's what you like and that's what you want to do, then what's the harm in it?
So I have a different question to spin on you, because I'm sitting here thinking about it. Do you think comics nowadays, like a Gallagher or a Carrot Top, would be as successful as they were in older, 80s or 80s, 90s, early 90s with the invention of YouTube? Like, do you feel like something, even the Amazing Jonathan, that I know the documentary,
Amazing Jonathan is a good
I still have to watch it, but comedians like that, and we just sat and watched one of his old comic bits. It was very reminiscent of Carrot Top. I don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg. But
Carrot Top's been around for a while, yeah.
Do you think like something like that's got more of a kitsch factor, Gallagher of all things, even though Gallagher's bits were definitely more politically inclined than maybe Carrot Top's?
Part of the joy of Gallagher is getting hit with watermelon.
Yeah, that's weird.
So part of it's going to be...
You've got the ice challenge, the ice bucket challenges and stuff like that. Do you feel like YouTube maybe takes away from some of those comics?
Nah, not at all. I think it's a case of it's promotion and it's exposure. Nothing that you see on, like, if you genuinely like a comedian or genuinely like something, you're going to want to support them anyway. Like, I've watched Dave Matthews videos on YouTube, and I still buy all the albums. I still go to concerts. I've seen him 14 times in concert now. Like,
right.
So if you genuinely like something, you'll find ways to support it. I think that might have been lost over the years with YouTube and Napster, if you want to go old, Grey Muzzle over here. I think there's been a level of forgetting how to support things. A lot of people just think that exposure is support. Like, we are fortunate enough to have Patreon supporters that keep our lights on.
Right.
But there are others that also don't look and go, oh yeah, so this is good enough or whatever. And obviously we don't make a living on this, and we're not trying to turn this on us. Support us, Patreon, woo! But if you genuinely, like, there's a generation of people that get look, and I think stuff like Patreon help now. I think there's people, especially again in the fur culture, that artists will be loud and vocal and go, I don't need exposure for payment. I did a thing, I want payment for the thing. Don't ask me for free art or for free stuff. I mean, it's
a fine line. It's a very fine line. It's people that want to be paid for the time and effort that they've put into it. Not only, and as one of our very talented listeners can say, is not only are you paying for what I'm producing for you at that moment, you're also paying for a portion of what I did to learn how to do that.
I can say that as an electrician.
Yeah.
I said it as my career. Like, yeah, it's only going to take me, half hour to install a new light bulb, or an hour to put in a light bulb out, a whole new outlet or something, or a new ceiling fan or something. It's not going to take me long. But I did spend a year and some change in school
learning how to do it faster and safer than you can.
So that is why you were paying me to do this, not because, it only took me a half hour. No, it took me a half hour plus the years of experience I've been doing this. Artists are the same way. There's many artists that's been doing this for 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years.
I kind of am going to reel that back on my question, though. If you have somebody, a teenager, 13, 15, 16 years old, that is starting to enjoy comedy on a, hey, I sit down and I watch YouTube for 4 hours a day, and they've got that niche market of pranksters or people that do stupid shit on YouTube for essentially free. Why am I going to go to a comedy show and pay $60 and see somebody do that?
Because ultimately you're losing out on the group experience. And that's the thing about it, is it's going to be a group dynamic. It's always going to have a interactive part. That stuff is good. I watch YouTube videos all the time. I watch comedians. I watch musicians. I watch all sorts of stuff. But I still pay $60 a weekend to go LARP in the woods with a variety of people. I was gonna reel it back to more of what we do. I have 50 different role-playing games on my computer and Xbox and all these other consoles. I could go ahead and play a role-playing game, but it's different to be there. For live-action role-play, obviously, we interact.
Right.
We still go to conventions, that have us interacting with others. Again, it goes back to the basic fundamental point of we're still sociable creatures. So there's a shared experience when you go to a theater, when you go to a concert, when you go to see a comedian or a show of some sort live. There's a shared experience, the oohs and ahs of somebody else, or the spectacle of being able to see them to a point. There's a bragging right of being able to be like, yes, I was there. I was there when one of them Siegfried and Roy, some bitches got bit by a tiger. I was there. You know, somebody could say that. They could say that. Like, I remember when he got mauled. Like, so, and for our younger listeners, go look up Siegfried and Roy. Nom tiger. Anyway. So that is one of the things. Yes, I agree. But if you know somebody, if you have a kid, especially if you're that kid's parent, and you notice that they're just full on into, hey, my kid's watching 4 hours of comedy a day or something, then I would think as a parent you go, we're going to go see a comedian.
Right.
And get you into that direction. And maybe that's me. I'm speaking as a guy that has no kids and will probably never have kids. If I was a parent, that would be one of my immediate reactions of going, hey, you sure like watching a lot of, be it baseball, be it cricket, I don't know, shuffleboard, whatever, I don't give a shit. You're going to watch 4 hours of shuffleboard on YouTube all day? Then damn it, I'm enrolling you into some sort of shuffleboard club or something. Because clearly there's an interest. Clearly there's a want. Clearly there's some other force driving it.
Right.
And maybe they don't like it. Maybe they just like to watch it and don't like to play it. Okay, fine. Maybe they could be a referee. Maybe they could own a shuffleboard club or something if they feel that way about a thing. Music. You know, hey, you watch a lot of music and you don't know how to play an instrument. Yeah, but I like audio engineering, or I want to be a roadie. Like, whatever. Do whatever makes you happy.
Right.
So if I would think you would be fortunate if you had a 12-year-old that showed vested interest in something so obvious. And especially like, Ma, I really like comedy. Like, we're going tomorrow then and going to go take you to and see what kind of life they lead and this and this. And, like, maybe it's something they could get into. Because even if they don't get into comedy itself, maybe they like public speaking. Maybe they like the attention. Maybe they're good storytelling. So maybe it's not comedy, but maybe it's storytelling. Good point. Maybe it's other soft skills that they could develop through that interest. Music, whatever it is. They like watching cricket and they want to go learn how to play cricket. They could still meet people. They could still networks, interact. All these things are positive skills. So as easy it is for us to look at and go, yeah, but all he does is sit and watch YouTube all day. Like, yeah, but what's the interest there? Is it in video games? And let them play video games. Is it into X hobby or Y hobby? Are they into this? Like, then support that. Foster that growth. Like, it's exciting.
And that goes to not only necessarily parents in general, but anybody that's got a friendship towards somebody that enjoys something.
Absolutely.
We should all find things that we have passion in, like we say at the end of every episode. Find those things that you have passion in and not only support them yourself in your own passions, but supporting them in other people's passions.
Celebrate those passions. Celebrate those kind of hobbies. Celebrate in all things geek. Because, hey, we're all geeks. And to be otherwise may very well mean to live without passion. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Grey Muzzle Geekery with Dusty Red and Dusty White.
You can support our continued geekery at our Patreon website, patreon.com/Grey Muzzle Geekery. Be sure to check back often as we start to add geek cred levels.
You can send your questions and comments to us at greymuzzlegeekery@gmail.com or find us on Twitter at Grey Muzzle Geek.
We can be found on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and Buzzsprout.
And a special thank you to Pepper Coyote for our intro theme. And if you like what you heard, you can find more of his stuff on Spotify, Patreon, or directly from his Bandcamp page.